Telugaddaku Swagatam. We welcome you all for Telugadda, the web news channel of Telugu people. We today have a very, I can say, timely discussion and also a long pending discussion on art and culture, through which we are going to learn it through the experience of JNM. That is, we are also celebrating 50 years of JNM's saga in people's art and culture. Today we have two special guests. One are Malaysri Hashmi, Comrade Malaysri Hashmi. I don't think I need to introduce her to the people's art, our people's artist. She is the people's representative of people's artists in India, I think. And she is associated with JNM for past 50 years. We welcome Maladi, and we have also Sudhanva Deshpande, who was part of JNM for a long time. And he is an artist, he is a writer, he is also an editor of Leftward books. He also wrote a book on JNM named Halla Bol, which I think many of you might have read. It was a wonderful book on the in the history of JNM and the journey of JNM. So now I welcome both of them. We'll start with Malayashri, Comrade Malayashri. Mala Didi, the first question for you is, can you tell us, before, starting of JNM in 73, Sabdar and his associates were part of IPTA.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'd like to know, why was it necessary to start a separate group? Quite often it is discussed that we don't need, all these things after having the great IPTA there, and, because of this kind of separate groups formation, IPTA has been weakened and all those things. And also I'd like to tell us briefly about the journey of JNM from 73 to 78, because that I think is a initial phase, and 78 onwards, that's a different phase in JNM's history. So please talk about that.
Thank you, Devi, and thank you, Telugadda. JNM was actually, before JNM, the pre-JNM, which was the IPTA phase, was actually initiated by a bunch of radical students from the Students' Federation of India in 71. And they really wanted to do cultural activities of the kind that IPTA had been doing earlier. And actually, at that time in Delhi, there was the need, which is something we realized later, when you start looking back on time, that there was a need to do different kinds of cultural activity. And there were groups like that who were doing different things, even political groups, which we may not have known at that time, but they were there doing things over a period of time. And a lot of young people and not so young people, even people who were in IPTA until the 60s, they had been reactivated to come back and restart IPTA. The work in IPTA was essentially very simple, because it was very, in one sense, the main movers were a bunch of very young people who had very little experience in theater and other arts, but they had a lot of interest and they knew about IPTA's work. There were a couple of plays. We did lots of songs for Vietnam. Performances happened sometimes in colleges, but most often in working class areas. And for one reason or the other, after all, there was a structure to IPTA before, and there was a space which belonged to IPTA, which was being used by one of their kind of, erstwhile members as a private business space, like an office. And partly because of that, and partly I think that the fact that the younger people in the group, they were very clear, that this whole link of theater and the people had to be very strong, and that they would go to, where there were a lot of unions were being formed at that time. So they wanted to go and perform in those unions, especially because that was the kind of the beginning of the textile agitation that was beginning, and it would continue for years after that. So, but there were a lot of problems in adjusting to that. There were lots of differences of opinion within the group. It wasn't simply a question of old and new, because that wasn't the case. That, older people said no and younger people said yes. It wasn't that. It was a question of what was IPTA doing and what it should be doing. It was really a question of understanding and of ideology to some extent. So one reason or the other, it seemed it was inevitable, that this group would have to break away. And so we called ourselves Jana Natya Manch, which is actually a kind of a Hindi translation of People's Theatre Association. And it was a very small group in 73, to say which month, what happened, it's very hard because there's very little record of that. So it's largely through memory that it has been put together. But I know that the first play that was done by Janam was in fact a Bangla play. It was done in Bangla by there were, I think, 6 actors in it. They all learnt Bangla. Some of them knew how to speak. 1 or 2 of them were Bengali. And it was a play called Mrittur Otit, Bury the Dead, of Irvin Shaw's Bury the Dead. The translation of it had been done by Utpal Dutt. It wasn't a very long play, I think 40 minutes or so, and it was done at the Durga Puja festival in Delhi, which must have been in the month of October. And they did, I remember seeing 2 shows of it, and I don't think they could have done more than a total of 5, maximum 6 shows, because Durga Puja is itself only for, performance is only on 4 days. So after that, once that happened, and, always the group was formed, a play happened, doesn't matter if it was in Bangla, they were able to draw in more people, especially those people who had were with them in IPTA, not even a few months ago. And the first play that they did was Bharat Bhagya Vidhata, Ramesh Upadhyay's. This was a kind of a musical, and Kavita Nagpal had directed that play, Ramesh Upadhyay's play. The second play was Bakri, which was written for Jana Natya Manch by Sarveshwar Dayal Saxena. And that was a super success, actually. Both the plays toured, not just, it was performed in Delhi also, but these were big plays. So they were performed on makeshift stages outside big factories, or late at night, shutting off the street. But they also had kind of a tour of North Indian, the Kisan Sabha especially called them, on Western India, actually, more than that, Western UP. I think a total of over 50 shows each must have been done of these 2 plays. They performed extensively, I know that, and everybody has a story about there, what happened, how when they reached there, how many people were there, how, in the rural areas, people just, मतलब जैसे कहते हैं ना, उम्र पड़े, सब आ गए, कुछ होने जा रहा था तो लगा कि आके नाटक देखना है, और वो लंबे नाटक थे जिसमें नाच गाना था, तो गलत फहमियां भी थी, उनको लगा होगा कि ये नाचने वाले आए हैं, मगर अंततः नाटक का एक असर रहा, और बड़ा सक्सेसफुल रहा ये दोनों टूर. और इस दौरान द ग्रुप रियली ग्रू, and there were lots of people, younger people and talented people, actors, writers, musicians. Then was emergency in 75, and unfortunately during emergency we did nothing. Effectively we did nothing. मिलते थे, बातचीत होती थी, पर दिल्ली में बहुत सब कुछ बहुत ही कड़ी नजर में रखा जाता था, तो एक डर तो था मेरा मानना। ऑल्सो ये भी हुआ था कि वो वाला टाइम था जब एक से ज्यादा लोग नौकरी के कारण दिल्ली के बाहर चले गए। सफदर हिमसेल्फ, वो 75 में उसने एमए अपना कंप्लीट किया, तो उसको नौकरी मिली थी, तो वो गढ़वाल यूनिवर्सिटी चला गया और उसके बाद कश्मीर यूनिवर्सिटी। तो वो दिल्ली में वो 2 साल नहीं था, लेकिन अन्य लोग थे, पर नाटक नहीं हुआ। उसके बाद लौट के आए जब, तो 77 में नाटक हुआ आफ्टर द इमरजेंसी। फिरंगी लौट आए। मतलब प्रोडक्शन तो बढ़िया था, आई थिंक। मुझे बहुत अच्छा नहीं लगा था, मैं सच्ची बता रही हूँ। मगर उसके शोज नहीं हुए अनफॉर्चुनेटली। और कभी कभी ये भी होता है कि एक ऑर्डिनरी प्रोडक्शन बहुत अच्छा हो जाता है, जब थोड़े से शोज होते हैं तो वो बंध जाता है। उसके शोज ज्यादा नहीं हो पाए। उसके थोड़े दिन बाद, 5-6 महीने बाद, एक और नाटक किया जो सफदर के इनिशिएटिव पे हुआ, क्योंकि वो छुट्टियों में दिल्ली आ गया था। दिस वाज इन 78, सॉरी, इन 77 दिसंबर। दिस वाज अ प्ले कॉल्ड अब राजा की बारी है, ट्रांसलेशन ऑफ उत्पल दत्त का एक और नाटक। बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग नाटक था। और लंबा उसकी रिहर्सल बहुत लंबी चली, पर नाटक अच्छा निकल के आया और परफॉर्मेंसेस भी अच्छे हुए। हमने ऑडिटोरियम, ओपन एयर ऑडिटोरियम में दिल्ली में किया था, पर उसके बाद ज्यादा शोज नहीं हो पाए। मुश्किल से आई थिंक 4-5 और शोज, टोटल ऑफ 8 या 9 शोज हुए होंगे। ये वाला जो है एबार राजर पाला, ये फाइनली स्टेज हुआ था मार्च के महीने में, दैट इज मार्च 78। बाय देन सफदर हैड गॉन बैक टू कश्मीर यूनिवर्सिटी। फिर हम सोच रहे थे क्या करें, एंड आई जस्ट एंड इट हियर कि गर्मियों में जुलाई के महीने में सफदर वापस लौट के आए और हमारी एक बहुत छोटी सी मीटिंग हुई थी। क्योंकि तब क्या होता है कि जब ग्रुप में नाटक चलता है तो बहुत लोग जुड़ते हैं, रहते हैं, काम चलता है। जब नाटक नहीं होता है तो वो धीरे धीरे लोग अलग अलग अपने काम में जुट जाते हैं, तो ग्रुप भी छोटा हो जाता है। तो उस टाइम पे ग्रुप बहुत छोटा था। ये मैं 78 की बात कर रही हूँ, जुलाई में। मतलब मुझे ऐसे वेगली याद है कि जुलाई की बात है ये, हो सकता है अर्ली अगस्त हो। हम ऐसे ही बात कर रहे थे कि क्या करें। हमने ये 2 नाटक किए इमरजेंसी के बाद, और ये नाटक अच्छे नाटक थे, सक्सेसफुल थे, लेकिन इसके शोज नहीं हो पाए। और वो क्यों नहीं हो पाए? क्योंकि जो लोग हमें शोज पे बुलाते थे, उनके ऊपर इतने सारे केसेस थे कि वो उनके पास साधन नहीं थे हमें नाटक के लिए बुलाने के लिए। सो वी डिडंट नो व्हाट टू डू, और हमारे पास भी बहुत ज्यादा साधन नहीं था। सो वी बातों बातों में सफदर सेड समथिंग वेरी सिंपल, कि अगर हम छोटे नाटक नहीं ले जा सकते हैं जनता के बीच में, तो हम बड़े नाटक ले जाएंगे। सो इफ वी कांट टेक बिग थिएटर टू द पीपल, सॉरी उल्टा मैं कह रही हूँ, इफ वी कांट टेक बिग थिएटर टू द पीपल, वी शुड टेक स्मॉल थिएटर। तो अब छोटे नाटक कहाँ से मिले? हमने बहुत पढ़े थे, पता नहीं कहाँ कहाँ से ढूंढ के हम छोटे छोटे नाटक पढ़े थे, कोई भी हमें अच्छा नहीं लगा था। एंड देन वाज द, I think, the most decisive, one of the most decisive acts of Janam, that a new play was written by the group members. So Rakesh Saxena and Safdar, they wrote this play Machine. After I mean, there was an internal discussion, of course, but we also, the idea came from one of our trade union comrades who told about an incident that had happened in a factory. And I think that was a new chapter of Janam.
And Didi, I'd like to know, pre-emergency days, what was the actually intervention of a Janam to the political turmoil at that time?
Well, basically, we were performing whatever play we had, and the Kisan Sabha uh, had a long agitation in Western UP at that time, which is why we were performing for them these 2 plays. This is just before emergency. The other thing that we did do was, there was in Delhi, very difficult for small groups, not just Janam, but other groups also. Very difficult to either have rehearsal space or, to book a hall. And this whole system of booking hall and getting permissions and tickets and entertainment tax exemption and everything is very complicated. It's very complicated even now. But there was some rule at that time that said that if you are an amateur group, which is what all these groups were, then you are exempt from many things. But that wasn't happening. So that was one of the things that at Janam's initiative, there were these small meetings with various officials in trying to persuade, them to make theater, the performances more viable. There was this idea that, in fact, Sabdar also had, and I'm sure other people also had at that time, of, going to these in the central district of Delhi. There are these marriage halls. They are called Barat Ghar. The government has set up. It's basically a big hall. That's all, nothing else, with a stage sometimes. Very little arrangement of anything else, but at least it's an indoor space. And it's actually free में मिलता है वो, अगर आपको permission मिले तो, अगर आप इस तरह का करें. So
Yes.
there was this also talk of approaching the officials of the New Delhi Municipal Corporation to give this space on to be used for performances on a regular basis to all groups, not just Janam, to all groups, for rehearsal and for that. Nothing on a regular basis transpired. We did perform at some of them. And I think other groups have also performed there, but that was only in that time. Then Janam later also once or twice performed in these areas, in these spaces. But that was because of some local organization booked that place, and that's how it happened. There was a conference or meeting, and that's how. But from directly approaching and doing it, it used to be very difficult. So these were the two things that I know that was there. But at that time, I think in Delhi also, it wasn't as if that as much theater is being done now by younger people in colleges, for example, was not the case. So
okay. Now I go back to Suzanva. Suzanva, the author of the magic book called Magic Book on People's Theatre, I call it, the Halla Bol. Welcome again, Suzanva. Now the question for you is that, see, I have read in your book that IPTA has gone back to its own days, old days of, having more aesthetic and qualitative performances after 73. What they have done or not is not my problem. But what made Janam to bring it back to its actually the slogan of the people's art back into the arena? What are the circumstances that made Janam to go back to the streets?
Well, thanks very much for organizing this this discussion, and thanks very much also for having me here, Devi. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I should just say that I think the most important thing about Jana Natya Manch in all of its 50 years of existence has been the connection between our theatre and people's movements. And that has been the core of our work. Now, whether we are doing big plays on proscenium stages, whether we are doing it in an auditorium or outside in the open to thousands of people, or whether we are doing street theatre, or whether we are doing any of our other activities, like journal sometimes, organizing lectures, workshops, whatever it is. All the different things that Janam has done over the 50 years is the connection with people's movements and organizations that represent the people. So our connections in the initial years with the Kisan Sabha was very strong. But over the years, since the late 70s, since after Machine in particular, our connection with the trade union movement has also become a very strong strong connection. And I think over the last 50 years, if you take the street theater period of this time, which is 45 years we've been doing street theater. In that time, of the thousands of shows that we have done, at least half of them, I think, this is just a guesstimate, we don't have exact numbers, but at least half of them, I think, would be connected to some kind of trade union activity in one way or the other. These are shows that have either happened in working class bastis and mohallas, or they have happened in industrial areas. Simultaneously, our connection with the women's movement, with EDWA, with the students' movement, with the SFI, with the youth movement, with DYFI, and a whole host of other organizations, like, for instance, residents' welfare associations in housing colonies, or let's say some particular teacher in a school, and so on. All of these associations have become stronger and stronger. And I think it is fair to say that Jana Natya Manch wanted to read that this is the umbilical cord that has never been broken between Jana Natya Manch and people's movements.
Wonderful.
So whether we have done big plays or small plays, the thing that has united all of our work for 50 years is this connection with people's movements, with movements on the ground. Safdar, in a very memorable passage in one of his articles, he makes the point that what is the point of people's theater, of street theater? Why do street theater? That the job of street theater is to mobilize the people behind organizations that fight for their rights. And so
Yes,
therefore,
I have read it.
and so therefore, this connection that Safdar makes between the artistic work of theater and the organizational work of grassroots organizations, this connection is very important. So while there are a lot of people who would do plays or artistic work with a political understanding or a political thrust or political content, I think what distinguishes Janam and many others like Janam, like the PNM, like this connection between art and organization. We believe that our art has value, has meaning, if it contributes to the organization building at the ground level, because that is how people's movements are strengthened. And that's what we have tried to do in these 50 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's a very good point. Reaching out and to be part of the mass organizations and mass struggles, people's struggles. Also, taking art to the workers or whoever are struggling for their rights. But can you tell me, there was at that time the theater of Badal Sarkar and other group theaters are also performing in the street. What's the difference between the two?
Well, I should say that we have the highest regard and respect and admiration for the work of Badal Sarkar and many others of that era and of that kind. And in my book as well, in the book Halla Bol, I have mentioned some of these other groups as well.
Yes.
So in principle, we have nothing against. There's no question about it. But I think really the difference lies in what I was saying earlier, that whether it was Badal Sarkar or some of the other people who were doing this kind of that the cause of Indian significantly, both in the aesthetic realm as well as in the way in which issues have been taken up by people like Badal Sarkar. And I think his very strong commitment to creating theater for the ordinary people, that ordinary people should be able to watch this theater, should be able to afford it. The theater is not only meant for elites. It's not only meant for rich people, for middle class people, and so on. The theatre must have a connection with very ordinary people on the street. I think this idea, free theatre, you Muktangan, free theatre, has been a core idea that I think is common to the work that Bhadata did and Jana Natya Manch did, right? But at the same time, I think what distinguishes us from his kind of work is our connection with actual mass organizations and mass struggles. I think that's been the distinction.
Yeah. You have a concrete goal, and also you have very concrete realities reflected in your place, right? Didi, I'd like to ask you about the composition of the JNM, membership of the JNM, and I'd also like to know who besides you continue with JNM for a long time, 50 years of journey. And also, we are wondering, 50 years is a very, very long time for a group theater to work for, even if it is people's theater, even if we have the support of mass organizations, it is very difficult to sustain the group. So how do you actually get new members? How do you train them and all those things? I'd like to know how you actually organize the whole thing.
सॉरी, तरह तरह के लोग जन्म में हैं, और शायद ये जन्म की खासियत है कि जन्म के दरवाजे बहुत लोगों, सबके लिए शायद खुले हैं, जिसके पास वक्त है, और वक्त बहुत जरूरी है क्योंकि थिएटर में वक्त लगता है, और ये आने के बाद लोगों को समझ में आता है। सिर्फ शौक से नहीं चलता है। आप भले ही कुछ नहीं जानते हैं, सीख जाएंगे, लेकिन टाइम आपके पास होना चाहिए। अब नौकरियां ऐसी हो गई हैं कि वो इंक्रीजिंगली मुश्किल है, बट इवन सो Janam's composition has always been very mixed, and I think that is one of the strengths of Janam. It has been mixed in terms of backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, social backgrounds, but also of languages and of age. And that, I think, has been there from the beginning. And because it has always been like that, so young, old, middle-aged, all kinds of people come and they find a space here. The important thing is that everybody in Janam is equal. You walk in, you are part of Janam, you give time, you do theater, you have a say in things. Yes, we have a kind of an organizational structure and all, but the thrust of the work is always, involving people's participation in the group full participation, and trying to, take everybody along and get everybody's ideas. One of the reasons, I think, this is a question that many people have recently asked me, how do you continue? I think we are able to continue because we keep on performing. And I think that's the most important thing, that relentlessly, you see, we have performances. And the more you perform, the more people join you, they come to know, and they stay on, and they get, they are able to perform. If they have come to join and there is no performance, they'll go away. But if there are performances happening, then they'll join, there'll be rehearsals, and they'll continue. And once people continue, many of them stay for a very long time. It's not as if that everybody stays for a short time. Sometimes people, they come maybe 4 or 5 days and they'll go away. Sometimes they'll stay for even 2-3 years, but their jobs will take them away, or their family will take them away. But there is always a bunch of, I don't even know whether you can call it a core or not, a bunch of people who are willing to stay on and do things for a long time. Not everybody stays on for like 25 years, but many people have. There are a bunch of people. So Dhanva came into Janam when he was a very young person. In the same way, Brijesh came when he was very young. In fact, Brijesh didn't join JNM. He first saw JNM plays, and that's how he came in. And we've always felt that the more shows we do, especially among the younger people, whether it's colleges or, in mohallas where there are people who can join us, people from the audience have always shown an interest in wanting to do theater. In Delhi, distances are very big, so that is also a factor. But with the internet explosion, a lot of people write to us on email, on Facebook, on social media, that they want to join. Out of them, 5% actually come. They show an interest, but they actually come. And out of that,
5% is very good number.
No, they actually come, and of which maybe only 1% stays on.
Okay.
Right. But even that's fine, because our group is very small. I mean, right now, if I look at an active membership, I mean, if I think of the membership of JNM from the people who were there from the beginning, I don't think that's the right way to look at it, because they are no longer active. They're not even in JNM. They're not even in Delhi. But people who are active at any point of time, it's never more than 20, 25.
Oh.
It's a very small group. I mean,
do you have a membership fee or something?
It's like 50 paisa or something. Now it's little more, 2 rupees.
Same as PNM.
But PNM
has 25.
PNM functions like a movement.
Yeah. That's
we
the
function
difference.
like a mandali, like a group. Yeah. That's the difference,
Yeah. मैं तो फिदा हो गई कि again twice you mentioned this. When the performances are thin, the number of people in the group are also less, and we continue to perform, we get more and more younger people. I hope that people's theater movement will learn its lesson from this. If you don't perform, you are a gone case. You don't get any new people. That is a lesson to be learned about it. And now, Sudhanva, you are talking about street theater and a comparison, but can you please tell us about why street theater is called a protest theater? Protest with a very concrete political content. It is always a protest theater. That's what Sabdar defined it, no? He said it is a modern phenomena, and this modern phenomena cannot be said that it was in our folk tradition, because in AP we have time and again we have heard people saying ये बहुत पुराने साल से हमारे पास था, लोग हमारे सड़कों पे वो परफॉर्म करते थे, तो क्या नया है इसमें? And how is it different from proscenium in reaching out for people?
Sabdar had written a little note soon after street theater began in Jana Natya Manch. In fact, 4 months after street theater started in Jana Natya Manch. So this note is from about February 1979, roughly, in which he makes a very interesting point. He says that street theater is the newspaper of the poor. Yeah. Now, what does he mean by this? He means that, if you think about the means of communication that are there in society, right? In those days, it was mainly newspapers and cinema and things like that. But now, of course, there's a net, including social media and so on. But at the base of it, if you look at it, the reality is that all of that is controlled by money. Even internet, even social media, which appears to be free, is actually controlled by giant corporations. And now there have been so many studies of how social media is oriented towards or favors elites, it favors those with money, it favors right-wing ideologies, and so on and so forth. Why does this happen? Because it's all पैसे का खेल है. तो अगर आप ये देखें कि जो लोग स्ट्रगल कर रहे हैं ऑन द ग्राउंड, जो लोग स्ट्रगल कर रहे हैं, उनके पास क्या जरिए हैं अपनी बात को लोगों तक पहुंचाने के? और सिर्फ अपनी बात को लोगों तक पहुंचाने के नहीं, to make sense of the world. How do you understand the world, right? Things that happen all around us, we make sense of it based on what we receive from society. Now, this could be within the family, what our elders tell us. It could be in a school, what our teachers tell us. It could be in a temple or a mosque or something where, some priest or some imam tells us, look at the world like this, look at the world like that, etc. Or it could be through advertisements, through cinema, and so on. Now, all of these would typically, in most instances, all of these would propagate a view of the world that is essentially conservative, that would maintain the status quo in place. Street theater tries to shift that. And street theater goes against the flow of the state, that those who are struggling should get their rights, and society should not be so unequal. इतना बड़ा जो एक दरिया है, जो अमीर हैं और गरीब हैं इनके बीच में, जो मर्द हैं और औरत हैं उनके बीच में, जो प्रिविलेज्ड हैं और जो अंडर प्रिविलेज्ड हैं उनके बीच में, कास्ट के बीच में, धर्मों के बीच में, भाषाओं के बीच में, रीजन्स के बीच में, वगैरह वगैरह. तो ये बहुत बड़ी जो खाई है, इस खाई को किस तरह से खत्म किया जाए और एक ऐसा समाज बनाया जाए जो कि बराबरी पे आधारित हो. तो ये अगर आप आइडिया लेकर के चलते हैं, तो ऑब्वियसली यू आर गोइंग अगेंस्ट द स्टेटस क्वो, बिकॉज़ द एलिट्स डोंट वांट दिस exploitative oppressive system to change. In fact, they want it to deepen and strengthen. So what means do the workers have? What means do the farmers have? What means do women, tribals, Dalits have to voice their ideas of the world? How do they make sense of the world? And it's in this context that Safdar had spoken about how street theater is the newspaper of the poor. This doesn't mean that it gives you the news, like, breaking news. हर 5 मिनट पे कोई ब्रेकिंग न्यूज आ रहा है, वो नहीं है बात. बात ये है कि स्ट्रीट थिएटर इन अ सेंस एडिटोरियलाइजेस ऑन रियलिटी, कि जो अपने इर्द गिर्द हो रहा है उसको समझे कैसे, राइट? इंफॉर्मेशन देने की बात नहीं है, उसको किस पर्सपेक्टिव में हम देखें, हम समझेंगे कैसे, और उसको एक क्लास पर्सपेक्टिव में देखना, उसको एक ऐसे पर्सपेक्टिव में देखना जहां पर के the interests of the poor, the interests of the oppressed, the interests of the marginalized are put forward. It's through that lens that you see the world. So therefore, street theater is not neutral. It takes a stand. It will be a stand always in favor of those who are oppressed and against those who are the oppressors. It's a form that will also give entertainment. But by entertainment, we don't mean this kind of hollow entertainment that is, dished out by, let's say, big films in Bollywood or Mollywood or whatever would, in Tollywood and so on and so forth. Not that kind of hollow entertainment, but really entertainment that makes the mind also think. Thinking entertainment. हंसिया, रोइया, उसमें कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. नाटक देखते समय आपके इमोशंस के ऊपर अगर असर नहीं पड़ेगा तो नाटक में क्या किया, काम क्या किया नाटक में, राइट? तो नाटक का आपके इमोशंस के ऊपर कुछ असर तो पड़ेगा, लेकिन उसके साथ साथ नाटक अगर आपको सोचने पे मजबूर करता है तो वो नाटक की स्ट्रेंथ है. सो देयरफॉर टू गिव द पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ द पुअर एंड द ऑप्रेस्ड एंड द मार्जिनलाइज्ड, to get people to feel something about the world and about the reality around them, to move people, and to move people not just to cry and go away home and say कि ये दुनिया बहुत खराब है, या ये कि बहुत खुश हो गए कि भाई किसी हीरो ने आकर के आपको बचा लिया, वो नहीं, लेकिन move people into action, कि आप इस दुनिया को बदल सकते हैं और उसके लिए एक्शन में आना जरूरी है, उसके लिए सबको मिलके काम करना जरूरी है. These ideas are at the core of street theater. And I think that's really what Safdar was getting at when he spoke about street theater being the newspaper of the poor.
Yeah, newspaper of the poor. Sudhanva, we had a lot of workshops with writers, particularly with the songwriters in PNM. You know that. Though we have very skilled people who can turn an article into a song. but quite often we used to tell them rewrite the song because it is not touching. उसमें जो नमी होना चाहिए वो नहीं है. आपने इंफॉर्मेशन दिया है लेकिन ये पहुंचेगा नहीं. So I'd like to ask, how did you make these people to reach for people? I mean, reach out to the emotions. उन लोगों के लिए पहुंचने के लिए ये एक सुंदरता का जरूरत होती है, एस्थेटिक्स का जरूरत होती है. वो प्ले इतना अच्छा और इतना ब्यूटीफुल बनाए कि लोग उसके ऊपर रोए और सोए, उसके ऊपर सोचे भी, है ना. तो ये करने के लिए तो वहां एक आर्ट चाहिए ना, not just an article or information or commitment. Quite often we see this with our even with our street theater people. They bring in and they think that कुछ 10 लोगों को खड़ा करो और नारे करो और ये हो गया, हमने बहुत बड़ा अपना कर्तव्य निभा लिया. So इसके बारे में बोलिए आप, क्योंकि Safdar criticized it like hell, I think. I have read it and I kept it in my office as a reminder for us, even though we could not follow it always. So elaborate on that.
देखिए, ऐसा है कि हम सभी लोग, आप भी देवी, माला भी, मैं भी, हम सब ने बहुत स्ट्रीट थिएटर देखा है. सिर्फ किया नहीं है, देखा भी है. बहुत सारे ग्रुप्स का हमने देखा है और उसमें से बहुत सा थिएटर ऐसा होता है जो कि देख कर के आपको लगता है कि इनके इंटेंशंस कितने अच्छे, इनके उद्देश्य कितने अच्छे. नाटक देख के आपको नहीं लगता है कि इनका नाटक होती है कि जब इस तरह के नाटक जाकर के आप किसी बस्ती में जाकर करते हैं, मान लीजिए वर्किंग क्लास बस्ती और बस्ती ऑफ द पुअर एंड सो ऑन, यू गो एंड परफॉर्म देयर. नाटक के बाद में आप जाकर के ऑडियंस से अगर पूछते हैं कि जी आपको नाटक कैसा लगा, आपने नाटक किया है और नाटक के बाद आप ही जाकर के पूछते हैं आपको नाटक कैसा लगा, तो 99.9% ऑफ द टाइम whoever is in the audience will say बेटा बहुत अच्छा लगा नाटक. They'll smile very sweetly and say बहुत अच्छा, बहुत अच्छा, बहुत अच्छा.
They like you. They like your effort to come to them.
Exactly. What they're appreciating is the fact that you came and you did something for them. That is what they're appreciating. Also, they're very decent people. They're very civilized, decent people. So therefore, they will not want to insult you as a guest. So therefore, they will always say nice things to you. Now, what I always say to our actors in Jana Natya Manch is that we have to have a different kind of antenna. और वो एंटेना है जब आप एक्चुअली परफॉर्म कर रहे होते हैं, उस समय पर ऑडियंसेस को देखना, समझना और उनसे आपको कितनी एनर्जी वापस मिल रही है इसको समझ पाना. और इसका एक बहुत सिंपल, बट लोग हंसते हैं मुझ पे कभी कभी जब मैं कहता हूँ, बट अ वेरी सिंपल यार्डस्टिक ऑफ दिस इज टू वॉच द चिल्ड्रन. इफ द play works emotionally, it doesn't matter if the children don't understand intellectually, trust in the action of the play. If they watch like this, then it means that your play is working, it's touching something somewhere. Then you know that the play is not working. Now, ये सिर्फ एक शो, दो शो देखने से नहीं होता, ये बार बार शो करते रहना होता है. जो माला कह रही थी, शो करते रहने का एक उसका बहुत बड़ा फायदा होता है कि ग्रुप चलता रहता है, नए लोग आके आपसे जुड़ते हैं. लेकिन दूसरा एक बहुत बड़ा फायदा ये होता है कि आप एज एन आर्टिस्ट, आप बस्तियों में जाते हैं, आप दुनिया के बारे में सीखते हैं. ऐसी बस्तियों में आप जाते हैं जहां पर आप कभी नहीं जाते वैसे. इवन इफ यू आर फ्रॉम अ लोअर मिडिल क्लास और वर्किंग क्लास बैकग्राउंड, राइट. अगर आप मिडिल क्लास, एलीट, अपर मिडिल क्लास फैमिली से, तब तो आप जाएंगे ही नहीं ऑब्वियसली. लेकिन अगर आप लो मिडिल क्लास, वर्किंग क्लास बैकग्राउंड से हैं, तब भी इनमें से 90% बस्तियों में आप नहीं जाएंगे कभी, क्योंकि आपको कोई वहां पे काम ही नहीं होगा. लेकिन अगर आप लगातार इन बस्तियों में जाते रहते हैं, then you start to understand people's lives, and then you start to understand what people mean when they respond to a play and how they respond to it. It's very important that we must always work towards re-energizing our artistic resources, as artists, कि हम बहुत अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं, हम जनता के बीच में जाकर नाटक कर रहे हैं, बहुत नेक काम कर रहे हैं, ये बोझा अपने सर पर लेने की जरूरत नहीं है। ये जरूर करना चाहिए कि हम जनता के बीच में जाकर नाटक कर रहे हैं तो हमारी जिम्मेदारी है कि हम अच्छे से अच्छा नाटक दिखाएं, जिस तरह से हम अच्छे से अच्छा
They
पॉलिटिक्स
deserve the
लेकर
best.
जाते हैं। Exactly. Just as we take the best politics amongst the people, we have to take the best art amongst the people also. Because the best an art that is not very good, it compromises the politics also. You know, it इसलिए आर्टिस्टिकली अपने आप को ट्रेन करते रहना, अपने इर्द गिर्द जो कुछ हो रहा है आर्टिस्टिकली, जो चीजें हो रही हैं, नए नाटक हो रहे हैं, नई फिल्में हो रही हैं, नए नॉवेल्स लिखे जा रहे हैं, कविताएं लिखी जा रही हैं, उस सब से अपने आप को अक्वेंट करना। आजकल तो इंटरनेट के जरिए बहुत से रिसोर्सेज अवेलेबल हैं, आप यूट्यूब के ऊपर बहुत सी चीजें देख सकते हैं, दुनिया भर में कितनी इंटरेस्टिंग चीजें हो रही हैं, सबको देखते रहना। इसलिए नहीं कि आप वहां से एग्जैक्टली ज्यों का त्यों, यहाँ पर चीज आप देखते हैं, आपका दिमाग काम करता है, इंस्पायर होता है, आप 10 चीजें देखते हैं, फिर कहीं ना कहीं वो किसी ना किसी रूप में आपकी क्रिएटिविटी के अंदर भी वो असर जो है, आपके ऊपर जो असर हुए हैं, जो आर्टिस्टिक असर हुए हैं, वो सारे आपकी क्रिएटिविटी के जरिए निकलते भी हैं। सो देयरफॉर that is something that we work very hard towards. And lastly, what is at the core of everything that we do, and as you said, Savdar used to be very insistent on this, that look, our audiences are not idiots.
Yes.
वो एजुकेटेड नहीं होंगे, बहुत ज्यादा हो सकता है आपके पास शायद कोई पीएचडी की डिग्री या कुछ होगा, दैट्स फाइन, आप बड़े अच्छे स्कूल में गए होंगे, अच्छे कॉलेज में गए होंगे वगैरह, वो सारे प्रिविलेजेस आपके पास होंगे, लेकिन जिंदगी का एक्सपीरियंस जो आपके ऑडियंसेस के पास है, वो उतना रेंज का एक्सपीरियंस आपके पास होना असंभव है, हो ही नहीं सकता। और वो एक्सपीरियंस आपके ऑडियंसेस को जो एक इंटेलिजेंस देता है, उस इंटेलिजेंस को कभी भी अंडरमाइन नहीं करना चाहिए, अंडर एस्टिमेट नहीं करना चाहिए। क्योंकि जब हम स्ट्रीट थिएटर करते हैं, और ये मैं बार बार कहता हूं अपने एक्टर्स से, कि जब हम स्ट्रीट थिएटर करते हैं उस समय पर हमारे पास बहुत सारी चीजें नहीं है, हमारे पास सेट्स नहीं है, हमारे पास लाइट्स नहीं है, हमारे पास कॉस्ट्यूम्स नहीं है, हमारे पास ये नहीं है, वो नहीं है, पैसा नहीं है, साधन नहीं है, वगैरह वगैरह, बहुत सारी चीजें नहीं है। लेकिन एक चीज है जो इस सबसे ज्यादा जो कीमती चीज है, which is the most valuable thing that we have the imagination of our audiences. And if we are able to unlock that imagination, if we are able to give that imagination a little push, then the audience will imagine much more than what you will show them. आप थोड़ा सा उनको एक मौका दीजिए इमेजिन करने का, और आप पाएंगे कि ऑडियंसेस अपनी इमेजिनेशन से बहुत सारी चीजें उसके अंदर डाल सकती है, बट यू हैव टू अनलॉक इट, एंड दैट इज द आर्टिस्टिक ट्रिक। वो जो चाबी होती है, उस ताले को खोलने वाली जो चाबी है, वो चाबी आर्ट है, वो है कला। वो अगर आपके पास है, अगर आप उस चाबी को सही तरह से इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं, तो आप ऑडियंसेस के इमेजिनेशन को, उनकी कल्पना शक्ति को, उनकी इंटेलिजेंस को आप अनलॉक कर सकते हैं। बट फॉर दैट you have to presume, you have to begin with the assumption that the audiences are as intelligent as you are, probably more intelligent, and they certainly have more life experience than you have. They have experienced so many things in life that you will never experience. And how can you channelize that experience, how can you channelize that intelligence in a creative way, is the challenge for.
Yeah. It's a very good and well said interpretation of talking about the how to make street theater appealing and touching. Yeah, it's very important than counting how many skill based workshops or acting workshops or study camps we have conducted. It is very important to have the perception of what we are looking at and how to get it done. Didi, I come back to you. Now, this is almost 30 years of neoliberalism. So I'd like to know, it's a long time, I know. But because of the time, I put it whole 30 years into one category. There are different phases of this phase, but still, I'd like to know the journey of intervention of Janam in these on these policies, because most of the time you deal with the factory workers and common people. So how that actually उसके जिंदगी में उसका क्या असर हुआ है, और उसको आपने अपने प्लेस में कैसे फिर से दिखाया है, ये मैं जानना चाहती हूँ। एक आध दो माइलस्टोन्स होते हैं, उसके बारे में भी आप कुछ बताएं, या आई डोंट वांट लिस्ट ऑफ द प्लेस, क्योंकि वो तो मिल जाएंगे। और उसके साथ साथ मैं ये भी जानना चाहती हूँ कि भाषा जो थी, जो 93 के पहले जो भाषा थी हमारे लोगों के बीच में, मेरे को लगता है वो भाषा भी बदल गई है। तो उसके बारे में और उसके साथ-साथ जन्म में, अपनी भाषा में, अपनी प्रेज़ेंटेशन में ये जो इंटरवेंशन होना चाहिए था, उसके बारे में जन्म ने क्या किया है, कैसे किया है?
इस पर्टिकुलर फेज में खास तौर पे एक चीज जो हमने की है, नाटक बनाने के टाइम हम लोग मतलब खुद आर्टिकल्स पढ़ना, न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ना, कोई एक्सपर्ट्स के साथ बातचीत करना बिफोर मेकिंग अ प्ले, all that we do, but one of the things that has actually helped a great deal is to go to our audiences and to our to our local hosts, trade union hosts, and talk to them about what is happening at the ground level. So when we talk to them before we make a play, it isn't simply to understand what is this policy, because that we can read and maybe an economist can also explain to us, but how it reflects at the ground level in a specific factory. What is that? To what is the effect, the impact on workers directly, their lives? That is something that we have always tried to, get. In fact, even when we were making Chakka Jam for the 88th strike, I remember that a very senior trade union comrade had come, and this was how we were trying to understand what does this strike mean to the workers. What it means to the trade union, we understand. What it means, the social relevance, we understand. What does it mean to them? And that is what will give us ideas for the play. So that has often helped. In fact, one of our plays called Ye Hum Kyun Sahe is really exactly what you are saying, how there is this, what has been the shift during this neoliberal area? What has been the change in the nature of exploitation and how it has sharpened, and the people involved, not just the workers, but also the owners. What is it? What are the policies? How do they behave? What do they do? And that is something we have got entirely from the audiences, from our, working class comrades, as to what is it that they are. So they would explain to us, okay, this is what happened there, this is what happened there, this is what people say. When we go there, this is what you will see. So they would talk about that life and how people were affected. We also, did interviews of people's, of what their experiences, like like a narrative of actual workers, and we interviewed them and recorded them and then wrote it out and used those as texts in the play. Not on every play, but in some plays we have done that. But that kind of a thing has been very useful in talking to people. I remember when we were making the last play, 2 years ago, before the pandemic, this labor code, we spent really many meetings in reading the labor code in Janam. And of course, we got totally confused because it was so complex. And what does it mean? We actually got the codes and read it and explained to each other what it means, trying to understand the thrust. We spoke to at least 7-8 trade union leaders of different levels, working in different areas. And they brought in their own, not just experiences, but way of explaining. And that's how, a play emerged. And we realized that we can't make a play on the labor code. I mean, that would be like writing another article, a theater article, like you were saying, you convert an article into a song. So it has to be the impact of that on their lives. And also these labor codes that were at that time, they had not yet been finalized, they hadn't been converted into acts. The problem was that workers themselves didn't understand what it meant. So this fight for the 8 hours was very difficult to understand, because in reality, what happened was that if you work longer, you earn more. You work 8 hours, you earn less. So that's how where things had come to, and how to, how to understand that this is actually, an exploitation that is increased. So anyway, all that was an understanding for us also, and not very easy to, bring into the place, because these were nuances. You see, capitalism also has, in one sense, it has become more naked and open, but it has also become more clever. And therefore, very cleverly, they have been doing things, which is, that's how the policies are today. That on the face of it, they seem good, but actually they are not. And that's why, it's important to understand the nuances of things, and try and see how we can bring it into the play. So the play that we did was actually not about the labor code, but about the effect and what the workers were doing in that. So how neoliberal changes affected the way factories functioned, and the composition of factories, and how they were organized, like smaller units and all that. And then what was going to be the future. And some people could see what the future was, and some people were not yet ready to see. So that was also a thing. So we, in fact, in these last 30 years, have a number of plays using different forms in bringing out these nuances in the labor situation, in the working class situation. So we've used things like cantastoria also, and playback also, different methods. And well, they've all worked. They've all worked. In the cantastoria, we've done over 250 shows. One of the things that any group, and our group always faces, is, how many people are available all the time to do lots and lots of shows. Well, that's not very many. So it means that one role has to be prepared by many people so that more shows can be done. All that takes time, which means the cast cannot be very big. So that is one of the things we've realized, that if we have a smaller cast of people, we are able to, in fact, it's really more mobile. Yeah. So that's how we are trying different things in this phase. Language, I'll tell you one thing about the language. Some years ago, this was a completely, working class area, migrant labor. They have come especially from Eastern UP, Bihar also, but largely Eastern UP, and some other nearby places. Very sprawling thing, just outside Delhi, near Ghaziabad, in fact. And we were doing a workshop with them, with the organizers, about this relationship between performing and the trade union organization, or the Mahila Samiti. That it was a workshop of a different kind. It wasn't a workshop on art and theater. It was a workshop actually on organization. And it was an eye-opener for us, but I think it was also very useful for our local comrades. So one of the things that emerged out of that got me thinking, one person said that, your plays are very difficult to understand. In very difficult Hindi. And I thought that's not true, because it's not in difficult Hindi. It's actually very simple Hindi. In fact, that is something we've always been aware of, that that the language, without simplifying it, has to be accessible to people. You cannot have, only literary language. The ideas can be complex, but it has to be presented differently. And it got me thinking, and I realized, that a lot of people, a lot of migrant labor, they don't follow this Hindi.
Mm.
Certainly the women
Yeah.
don't. The women don't. I mean, little conversation here and there they do. They understand what the play is about, naturally. I mean, big, mota mota जैसे कहते हैं ना, कहानी समझ में आ जाती है. But little details, song, meaning of songs, this phrase, that phrase, they don't understand. And that is something, that I thought that it's true, in Delhi today, there are so many language groups that are there. And, I mean, UP itself has so many language groups. And everybody is naturally, has a feeling for their own mother tongue and should also. But we are not in a position to use all those languages. In one play we tried, because it was about hawkers. So we had different people speak different little dialogues. That was only, frankly, just to feel good. It wasn't really, the play wasn't in a different language. It was in
Standard
the usual
Hindi.
colloquial Hindi that we write, that we speak in. But that is a point, that I don't know how to overcome that. But it is a point, I agree. And I think that it is there because some years later, some year later after that incident, we did a festival called Halla Bol Festival, which was a festival of working class performers, in which our trade union comrades were the curators. So we did a lot of the arrangements, so did they, but they decided who to bring and what kinds of things, and we put it all into place. It was amazing the number of people who would come, who would watch those songs, and especially songs and dance and theater performances. It was amazing because when they knew that Bhojpuri में होने जा रहा है, तो वो मतलब वो ग्राउंड जो है वो ओवरफ्लो करता था. रात के 8 बजे नहीं, रात के 2 बजे. Because they finished their work, everything was done, and they came. And it was amazing. It would go all night. I mean, that's something we can only enable. We can put together because we have contacts, we are able to, organize and arrange things. But I don't think that in terms of that language, we can bring it into our plays. I don't see how. In some plays, it may be possible to have different characters like that, but not in all plays. Not at all. I think it's a challenge all the time. I agree.
Yeah, it is there. It is there. Even with the same language, working with the same language, we have this problem. ये अपने एक बात ये है कि एरिया वाइज बदलता रहता है, रीजनल वाइज बदलता रहता है, वो बात नहीं है. ये तो विद इन रीजन, विद इन एन एरिया, ये भाषा की बात भी नहीं है. ये दैट इज हाउ दे express themselves. What they express themselves is different from what we express, the way we express.
Yeah.
ये चेंज है, तो इसलिए मैं उसके बारे में सोच रही थी whenever I think.
No, I mean, I see that, but there is, I feel, I don't know what to do short of learning all the languages, which is also impractical.
Not possible. Sudhanva, प्यार से सुद्धू, whenever I dream of a street play, see, I don't know, quite often तुम हमारे स्वप्न में आ जाते हो. I mean, like not like a glamorous hero or something, but with the Dil Mange More, you having a spear and Guruji, kuch aur chahiye. So, can you tell me about the place you have done on communal harmony, communalism, or the poison that is being spread today, particularly past 8 years of the regime? So can you tell me about that and JNM's work on that?
I think over the years, अगर आप देखें तो जननाट्य मंच के काम में
वो पहला था ना, वो अपहरण भाईचारे का, वहां से शुरुआत हुआ था.
नहीं, उससे भी पहले हत्यारे नाम का एक नाटक था.
हाँ, हत्यारे, राइट.
तो वहां से शुरू हुआ था. बट ओवरऑल आई वुड से दैट जो
have a problem with your connection. I'm not getting your voice, Sudhanva.
consistently 50 साल दिखते हैं जन नाट्य मंच के वर्क, महिलाओं का सवाल, own data.
So
I don't have
you'll have to
broadband here.
repeat. Excuse me, you'll have to repeat it because last 2.5 minutes you were totally inaudible.
I think over the last 50 years, if you see, then there are 3 or 4 themes that run consistently through all the work that JNM has done. On the one side, there is the theme of lives and livelihoods of working people, farmers, workers, etc., unorganized workers, daily wagers and so on. On the one side, there's that. On the other side, there's the issue of gender and, in particular, women. That's something that also runs through all of our work.
Okay.
The third is this whole issue of communalism, sectarian violence, and so on and so forth. और उसको अगर आप देखें बहुत broadly अगर मैं कहूँ तो 3 phases में आप इसको देख सकते हैं. एक तरफ ऐसे नाटक थे जो कि हत्यारे हुआ, अपहरण भाईचारे का हुआ, वगैरह वगैरह, इस तरह के बहुत से नाटक थे. उन नाटकों के अंदर ओवरऑल अगर आप देखें, what the plays were saying on the whole is that, look, the people are essentially secular. The people want to live together. It is these people who dharm ke thekedar, who become contractors of religion and politics. They are the ones who work to divide the people and who gain some political advantage out of it. So that was one phase of work that we did early on. By the time you come to 1992, the destruction of the Babri Masjid, which was a landmark event in the history of India, by that time we had started feeling uncomfortable about this kind of a framework. We didn't quite know how to break out of it, but we had started feeling uncomfortable about it. But we kept doing plays and so on. By the time you come to 2002 and Gujarat happens, the violence against Muslims in Gujarat happens. By that time, it was clear that what we had to attack, of course, that was very important and one had to attack that, but that what these forces are doing, Hindutva forces are doing, is that they want to refashion the Indian Republic into a fascist state, into majoritarian fascist state. तो इसलिए ये कहना कि इस तरफ भी कुछ गलत लोग हैं, उस तरफ भी कुछ गलत लोग हैं, हिंसा नहीं करनी चाहिए वगैरह वगैरह, that was no longer an appeal that we wanted to make. We wanted to say that, look, Hindutva as a political project is something that is opposed not just to minorities. It's not just in the against the interests of the minorities. It's against the interests of large numbers of Hindus as well. Whether they're Dalits or whether they're Hindus or on the borderline, like many Adivasi communities, it's a moot point whether they're Hindu or not, or whatever, But Hindutva as a project, as a political project, is also against the interests of women, for instance, and so on and so forth. So the idea was to attack the political project of Hindutva, to say that secular democracy is what needs to be safeguarded, and this fascistic Hindutva ideology needs to be opposed. So the moment you see it from that framework, then you don't do plays that kind of equalize things. कि कुछ लोग यहाँ खराब हैं, कुछ लोग वहाँ खराब हैं, हर कम्युनिटी के अंदर अच्छे लोग हैं और बुरे लोग हैं, उस तरह से आप नहीं देखते हैं. आप ये कहते हैं कि ये एक पॉलिटिकल प्रोजेक्ट है जिसके खिलाफ हमको politically fight करना है. So that's been the second phase of our work. It's sometimes not right to give it a very hard started happening. The third phase, I would say, has come in after the rise to power of Modi and the BJP in 2014. And at that time, we realized that in 2014 also, and even more in 2019, one realized that this is not just a question of, some political manipulation through which they have come to power, that there is a substantial amount of public support that this project is now gaining. And especially now, between 2014 and 22, in the last 8 years, I feel personally, I'm saying this, that personally I feel that the Hindutva ideological project has gained much more traction in society, especially in North India. I can't speak so much about the southern states, but certainly in large parts of North India, it has got a lot of traction. And we feel that given the fact that there is now vigilante, violence of various kinds, and so on and so forth, given the fact that they are now emboldened because of the political power that they hold, because they know that there's impunity. आप दिल्ली की सड़कों पर खड़े होकर कह सकते हैं गोली मारो, you can call for killing off of an entire community of people, and you will barely get a rap on the knuckles, if that. Generally you will not even get that. Generally you will be rewarded. On the other side, you go and talk about peace, you talk about saving the lives of those who are facing violence, you will be in jail. And that's what has happened in Delhi, for instance, and in many other places. One also has to be in how one deals with this. So while there is no question of compromising what we are saying, at the same time, there is also the reality of what is happening on the ground. There is the reality of also protecting ourselves. After all, we don't want to be martyrs. We want to continue doing plays. And there are lots of young people in the group, etc., etc. We have to protect them. We have to protect the people and the organizations that invite us to perform and so on. So given all of ways in which we can say the same things, but say it in a slightly more clever way, जिस तरह से आप frontally attack कर पा रहे थे पहले, वो उस हद तक आप नहीं कर सकते. आपको वही बात कहनी है, कहना वही सब कहने का जो कंटेंट है उसको नहीं कर.
Again, we have lost your voice, Sudhanva.
और उसको कैसे आप acceptable बनाएंगे. That I'm sorry, but broadband connectivity here.
Yeah.
I don't know at what point you lost my voice, but I'm just saying that that today one needs to be a little bit more clever in how one addresses these issues. The latest play that we have done is a play called Andher Nagri. It's inspired by Bharti 70 years ago. It's inspired by that, but it's not a remaking of that play. लेकिन उस नाटक के कुछ आइडियाज को लेकर के उनको एक नए एक प्लॉट में एक नए सिचुएशन के अंदर डाल करके थ्रू ह्यूमर, where you don't say anything directly, but you allude to things, you point towards things, and people are clever, they understand, but if you do it through humor, if you make people laugh,
Sudhanva, again, start
then
from
there's
Andher Nagari.
more of an acceptability. So how do we do this? हमारा जो लेटेस्ट नाटक है अंधेर नगरी,
हाँ.
ये नाटक भारतेंदु हरिश्चंद्र का एक नाटक है of the mid 19th century. उससे इंस्पायर्ड नाटक है. It's not exactly a reworking of the same play, but it's inspired by that. And what we are trying to do through this play is to use humor and satire to cleverly allude to things.
My God.
कह सकते हैं. ये हमारी एक कोशिश रही है, and we are trying to do that.
थैंक यू, बट एक बात और कहना है कि यू मेंशन्ड साउथ. It may, on surface, it may look different, but underground there is a lot of change also happening here. We are afraid of it. But even though till today, I mean, latest Prajanatya Mandali, we are able to confront it openly. I think it is very dangerous for any theater artist in North to talk, to confront it openly. वो थोड़ा सा फर्क है, लेकिन ज्यादा फर्क नहीं है, ये कहना चाहती हूँ मैं. और ये तो एक पॉइंट अभी मैं दीदी से पूछना चाहती हूँ. दीदी, आप प्रोसीनियम प्लेस के बारे में, ये सारे साल में आप मोतेराम का सत्याग्रह से लेके प्रोसीनियम प्लेस शुरू किए थे, तो उसके बारे में कुछ, वो कब कब किए थे, कौन से चीज पे किए थे, ये इसके बारे में नहीं, लेकिन हाउ आर दे कॉम्प्लीमेंटिंग ईच अदर.
हाँ, हमारा काम शुरू हुआ था प्रोसेनियम प्ले से.
हाँ हाँ हाँ.
मृत्यु रोती, बकरी, भारत भाग्य विधाता, फिरंगी लौटा, अब राजा की बारी. These are all proscenium plays. The proscenium plays were done in the open air most often. That's a different matter. But they were all proscenium plays. When we started doing street theater, we realized that this is something we need to work upon. And that seemed to be the need of the hour, to do these kind of smaller plays. So we were a very small group at that time. When we started Machine, we were not even 8 people. We were 7 people actually. And subsequently, when as people joined, we realized that, okay, we can do more and more and more. And we started doing more street plays and more street plays. And there was a time in the early 80s when we thought that let's also do another proscenium play, time to, do both. This was a feeling in the group from the beginning, that street theater is probably only a temporary thing. But I think what happened was that we realized that it is not a temporary thing. It's a form that has come to stay, and we need to develop and evolve that form and also do proscenium theater. Early 80s, there was once we tried, but we realized that we didn't have enough resources. So it was really in 88 when there were a bunch of new people who had come into the group. We were able to coordinate with 2 other cultural organizations, 3 actually. And around Premchand anniversary, we prepared Motiram Ka Satyagraha. And subsequently, we've been doing proscenium plays on and off. It's not possible to do it every year because the whole exercise takes a longer time. But proscenium plays also, they have, except for Motiram we did in halls, and so did we do Satyashodak and a couple of other plays, Varun Ke Bete. But subsequently, most of the plays we haven't booked a hall and done it. We've done it in halls because they've been invited to festivals. We were able to, in the late 90s, put together money through donations and make a mobile theater.
Yes.
And take these big plays right to the bastis, which was possible because I think as a group there were a lot of young people at that time in the group, and we had the time and the energy and everything. More than anything else, time. Because what happens is that if you're going to take the mobile theater to a basti, you have to have a team of 7-8 people who will go and set up the place, then we'll do the play, then they'll pack up and they'll bring it back and unload it. Now, not to have 7-8 people spend a whole day doing this every day or every other day is impractical. But whenever we could, we did. In fact, for nearly more than 15 years, we were able to, continue with that process. Another thing that has happened in Delhi, unfortunately, is that, the mobile theater needs to be put into a tempo. Tempo is not easy to take to every place. So there is a practical problem also. But the mobile theater, we have used it, the material of the mobile theater we have used to create spaces for theater as well as other kinds of performances, meetings, and other events. lectures that we have or other groups have, and we've sort of, collaborated with them. The proscenium plays over the years, the proscenium plays were never directly political, but they were. I mean, Satyashodak, how can you say is not political? At the time we did Satyashodak, nobody in North India really knew of Jyotiba Phule or Savitribai Phule. And that caste was something that was important. Everybody knew in their lives and in their places of work. But the fact that, it was something that is there in fabric of society, and it needs the importance it has in people's psyche. I think that play was a little bit before its times, perhaps, and it certainly showed the way. And it's a pity we haven't been able to revive the play. I wish we could. It was a very interesting play, and we had lots of, we did many shows, all in the auditorium, of course. Subsequently, our plays, we've also tried to think of it in this way, that how to do proscenium plays which we can also take to the areas, which is very hard. Without the mobile theater, it's very hard. So, maybe something in between, which will be not very long, but not like the street theater that we often do. There's a certain format to it, or certain look to it. I wouldn't say format, but certain look to it. Do it differently. So we've tried different things. One of our latest plays called Tathagat, which is...
And Gautam Buddha.
It is not about Buddha. It is about society. It's about caste. It's about gender. It's about many things. It's a very interesting play because at the level of the form, we do it like a street play. That means we do it out in the open on a street corner, but not a very narrow street corner, slightly broad street corner. But visually, it looks like a proscenium because there are costumes in it. And there is music, and the space, the use of the space is like that. And the flow of the dramatic structure is more like a proscenium plays. So these are, like overlapping areas. And I think those sorts of things are also important to work out because, in Delhi, certainly, it's very hard to take a big play in a working class area. It requires far too much arrangement and resources.
Either way.
Not just time, but resources of all kinds.
Yes.
So, maybe, a mixture of things. We did a very interesting play from Tagore, based on Tagore's novella, Chaturang, a play called Char Rang in Hindi.
Chaturanga,
I think it was a very successful play. We've done it in a variety of places, but it cannot be done outdoors because it requires light is a very important part of it. Light, and there is a certain visual that can only be done indoors. That's how it is. But it can be done in a very simple hall. It can be done in anywhere. It doesn't need an auditorium for it, but it has to be indoors. So we've tried to do in different kinds of places. I think the one of proscenium plays also have an advantage of, gathering together a larger group and doing something which doesn't seem immediate, but also has a more lasting value. It's sometimes easy, sometimes not so. I think ultimately at the end of the day, we have to keep on doing theater. Doesn't matter whether it's proscenium or playback or street or tree. Musical, not musical. You can't sing, make it not musical. But whatever.
Yes. Now coming to the other issues like Sudhanva. See, there were many groups formed after Sabda's murder. Many groups throughout India, right? And thousands of performances happened when there was a call given to perform after I mean in April, I believe, 1 week of street performances we called for. Of course, PNM also has done it. But what is the ab kya sthiti hai? What is the condition of these groups that were formed? Whether I know that personally that many of them actually dispersed. तो कितने हैं और कितने कर रहे हैं? You have any idea?
See, कितने हैं और कितने कर रहे हैं, इस तरह का कोई एक तरह से असेसमेंट करना बहुत मुश्किल है, क्योंकि जनरली स्ट्रीट थिएटर ग्रुप्स के बारे में, जनरली थिएटर ग्रुप्स के बारे में, पर्टिकुलरली स्ट्रीट थिएटर ग्रुप्स के बारे में ये एक ओवरऑल चीज देखी गई है थ्रू द लास्ट व्हाटएवर 40 इयर्स। इसके ग्रुप्स बहुत लंबे नहीं चलते हैं अक्सर, आमतौर पर। कोई 5-7 साल के लिए अगर चल गया ग्रुप तो अच्छी बात है, बड़ी बात है। ओवरऑल चीज क्या है? ओवरऑल बात यह है कि जब स्ट्रगल्स, आंदोलन, संघर्ष जब तेज होते हैं, उस समय पर उन संघर्षों की और उन आंदोलनों की जो जो जरूरत होती है वो ये है कि उनकी बात लोगों तक पहुंचे, नो। और वैसा जब होता है तो इस तरह के काम को एक जोर मिलता है, चाहे वो स्ट्रीट थिएटर हो, चाहे कोई और फॉर्म है। अब अगर मान लीजिए आप बात करें, इतना बड़ा फार्मर स्ट्रगल हुआ और दिल्ली के बाहर 1 साल से ज्यादा जो है हर इस बॉर्डर पे हजारों किसानों ने आकर के आंदोलन किया इत्यादि। उसको अगर आप देखें तो वहां स्ट्रीट थिएटर तो हुआ, ऑब्वियसली हुआ, लेकिन उसका मेन फॉर्म जो था, मेन फॉर्म इन विच the artists and the movement sort of came together and collaborated was not through street theater. It was through music. And literally thousands of songs got written and performed at that time, including all the major singers of Punjab. You see, और पंजाब हरियाणा के बहुत बड़े बड़े सिंगर्स ने अपने अपने अपनी कला के जरिए इस संघर्ष के साथ अपने आप को जोड़ा। But also there were hundreds of singers who are not so well known, who are not stars, right?
Yeah.
तो पंजाब में इन सिंगर्स के लिए एक ये सिचुएशन हो गई थी कि अगर आप फार्मर स्ट्रगल को सपोर्ट करने वाला गाना नहीं गाएंगे तो आपको शादी पे भी नहीं बुलाएंगे। You see, जो शादी के टाइम पे या फेस्टिवल के टाइम पे जो आपको परफॉर्मेंसेस मिलते हैं, जिससे आपका काम चलता है, रोजी रोटी चलती है, वो इनविटेशंस भी आपको नहीं मिलेंगे अगर आप फार्मर स्ट्रगल के सपोर्ट में नहीं गाएंगे। सो देयरफॉर
मैंने ये भी देखा है मध्य प्रदेश में कि शादी के जरिए बारात जब निकलती हैं कि औरतें घर में गाना गाती रहती है ना, तो उन गानों में भी ये चीजें शामिल हैं, उनमें भी ये पूरे गाने उस तरह के बदल दिए गए हैं।
जी 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 जी, बिल्कुल। तो मुझे लगता है कि जब आंदोलन तेज होता है, जब एक्चुअली आंदोलन होता है ऑन द ग्राउंड, उस समय पर उस आंदोलन की जो कंसर्न्स थे, उस आंदोलन के जो मुद्दे हैं, उस आंदोलन के जो इमोशंस हैं, उन इमोशंस को लोगों तक पहुंचाने का काम जो है वो कला करती है। अब वो स्ट्रीट थिएटर करता है या म्यूजिक करता है या कोई और कला करती है, दैट इज इट्स फाइन, दैट कैन बी ड्यू टू मेनी फैक्टर्स। और पंजाब के अंदर एक बहुत लंबा ट्रेडिशन है गानों का, और पंजाब के जो म्यूजिक इंडस्ट्री है, जो लोकल जो म्यूजिक इंडस्ट्री है, इट्स अ वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग पार्ट ऑफ पंजाब लाइफ ऑन द होल। तो वो नेचुरल एक्सप्रेशन है। जहाँ पर थिएटर एक नेचुरल एक्सप्रेशन है, वहां पर वैसे होगा। आप अगर मान लीजिए महाराष्ट्र में अगर आते हैं, जहाँ पर थिएटर का एक लंबा ट्रेडिशन है, यहाँ पर अगर आप देखें तो दलित जो आंदोलन है यहाँ के महाराष्ट्र के, उसके अंदर आप ये पाएंगे शायरी ट्रेडिशन बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग है, थिएटर का ट्रेडिशन बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग है। तो इन सब के जरिए इन आंदोलनों की बातें, इन आंदोलनों के मुद्दे और इन आंदोलनों के इमोशंस लोगों तक पहुंचाने का काम ये फॉर्म्स करते हैं, यू नो।
तो या ये बहुत ही मुश्किल है कि ये अंदाज लगाना कौन क्या कर रहा है, क्या नहीं कर रहा है। लेकिन बात ये है कि आप लोगों ने आई मीन इट वाज सहमत आई थिंक दीदी चौराहा का शुरुआत हुआ था। उसके बाद आप लोगों ने भी इनिशिएशन लिया था कि नेशनल स्ट्रीट थिएटर एक्टिविस्ट का मीटिंग हुए थे। अब वो डिसकंटिन्यूड हैं शायद। तो क्या आप जन्म के तरफ से कुछ इनिशिएशन लेने वाले हैं क्या?
नेशनल स्ट्रीट थिएटर मतलब ऑल इंडिया मीटिंग जो हम करते थे,
हाँ,
वो चौराहा का एक्चुअली कोई कनेक्शन नहीं था।
हाँ, नहीं था लेकिन वो स्ट्रीट फेस्टिवल था।
हाँ, वो फेस्टिवल था। ये मीटिंग करने का इरादा था कि जो लोग हमारे जैसा काम करते हैं, हमारे हमारे जैसे ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस हैं जो ग्रास रूट लेवल पे, ग्राउंड लेवल पे काम कर रहे हैं, हमें एक दूसरे से ना सिर्फ कांटेक्ट करना है, लेकिन अपने काम को समझने के लिए अगर इनिशियली हम समझें एक दूसरे के काम को, और फिर हम उसमें कुछ चीजें ऐड करें। मतलब
बिल्कुल।
इट वाज मोर ऑफ अ थिंकिंग
या थिंकिंग
एक्सरसाइज,
एंड शेयरिंग।
शेयरिंग एंड प्लानिंग एक्सरसाइज,
हुँ,
जो 3 दिन का होता था। वो
हुँ,
हमने 5-7 जगहों पे किया था, 99 ऑनवर्ड्स।
हुँ,
फिर वो डिडंट मटेरियलाइज, क्योंकि आगे वो हो नहीं पा, क्योंकि उसको अगेन वो होस्ट करने के लिए सारा, इट वाज जस्ट नॉट पॉसिबल टू डू इट।
हुँ,
प्रजानाट्य मंडली ने 2 बार किया था, जन्म ने 2-3 बार किया था, फिर प्रेरणा वालों ने किया था, आसाम में
हुँ,
लोगों ने किया था समाहार के इनिशिएटिव पे। फिर हमने दोबारा से कुछ साल पहले जब हमारी अपनी जगह बनी, तो हमने एक बार और किया उसे,
हुँ, हुँ,
2016 17 में, 18 में।
हुँ,
uh, it was, I mean, we have just not been able to do it because uh, I think basically because of lack of time and nothing else.
हुँ,
No other reason.
हुँ,
ये करना चाहिए, करेंगे, ये हर साल हम कहते हैं, but to find the time to do it, I mean, the planning itself takes a long time,
हुँ,
just the logistical planning
हुँ,
to get
हुँ,
everybody, and तो it's just that, it's not
हुँ,
so much, खर्चा इतना होता नहीं है, क्योंकि खर्चा तो लोग अपना अपना देते हैं, तो
हुँ,
हमें तो कुछ, we don't have to actually
हुँ,
bear the cost like that, it's not so expensive.
हुँ।
But
नहीं बात ये है कि बहुत सारे लोग यहाँ पे पूछ रहे हैं जो पहले हमारे काम से जो वाकिफ थे, वो पूछ रहे हैं कि वेदर जनम इज टेकिंग अनदर इनिशिएशन टू
I
टू
think
क्लब ऑल दिस।
we need to take initiative at our levels. I personally feel there was during these meetings एक बात आई थी कि हम जो है अपने region wise meetings करें, and I really think that's a more useful thing. ये
या
all India करने के चक्कर में it is so, to get everybody at the same place, same time, it's a huge task just of arrangement, not money so much, but just of arrangement. बट ये बात हुई थी कि ईस्ट जोन, नॉर्थ जोन ऐसे करें, तो मे बी it will be, there'll be more such meetings and more, give and take, and maybe even workshops.
या
थोड़ा बहुत हुआ था, but again it wasn't really sustained. I still
Yeah,
think
I know. I remember it that we thought of having the regional organizations to come together and share and help each other to perform and all those things. But still, many wanted me to tell you when I said I am taking an interview with you. They said ask Mala Didi to take at least initiation in talking to different organizations, at least have a Zoom meeting or something to start over the all these things.
I don't think Zoom meeting is of any value, because it's the same thing. We will all say yes, yes karna chahiye. I'm sorry, this yes, yes karna chahiye is of no value. I don't want to spend time on that. कि मैं
Then
Zoom
what?
meeting करूं, 10 लोगों को फोन करूं, वो कोई मतलब नहीं है.
Then
I
what?
think we need to have actually brainstorming meetings of how to what is the way forward. Not
Yeah.
I don't mean skill workshops. Skill workshops also,
No, 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 no.
they are important and we should try and do that, but we should do with skill workshops with other people also, who are willing to help us, and that's probably a better way. But to have these kind of ideological brainstorming that I'm talking about, I think it has to be done physically, and it possibly doing it in smaller groups is a better idea. It's too much to handle. Zoom is nonsense. I'm sorry.
Okay. Why should you be sorry if you feel it so? Uh, then again, I think there is a need of think tank or brainstorming, whatever you call, from the left theater artists. To be specific, left theater artists to come together and start working vigorously. May not be as vigorously as Janam, but at least to start working on the ground again.
Yeah.
From the 1.5 hour discussion, we have been talking repeatedly about keeping in touch with the movements, part of the movements, and go to the people. That is where they must be pushed back, or we must push ourselves back into the arena.
Yeah.
So I hope that we'll talk further on that.
Sure.
Discuss on that and come to some kind of conclusion to work on it. Now again, the last question. I think we are almost reaching 2 hours. Don't worry, we'll put it in two parts. So the last question is, what is to be done now? What is to be done? Because there is a lot of need, because after a long time, after 2 years break, we also went back to performing latest this May. So we have seen that even the performances with the new fellows and very in my opinion very good. Even then people are like absorbing it like they are thirsty to see something, in spite of all the social media, TVs and everything, they still attending it. I was amazed to see that how many people they're coming and they're enjoying that kind of a thing. With people, they need it. They need it, and I think it is our duty to do it. So the question is, as it was said long ago, do we need, I come back to two things. One, how are we going to and what is to be done by the theater groups that are existing, and also how can we evolve a language, secular, a language of we can say against the hatred, against all these authoritarianism, hegemony, and all those things. What is this new language, and how are we going to evolve it? First question is to you, Didi. See, how are we going to do it?
We just have to keep at it. नाटक करते रहना पड़ेगा, और मुझे नहीं लगता है कि कोई एक तरीका है. I really don't think there is only one way. I think that more and more people need to engage in the arts, theater and other forms. And it's not as if they are not. I think they are. But I suppose we are not enough in number. That's the only thing. And I can only say that perhaps this is only a phase, and that more people will come, because it's not as if that younger people are not interested. That's not true. They are interested.
Yes,
they are interested and they want to do things. So I guess we just need to have more groups, and PNM needs to have more units and do more theater.
PNM needs to do a lot of things.
No, I think everybody needs to do more theater. Because we're talking of theater, it could be anything. It could be. I think that a lot of poets, for example, at least in Hindi poets, they are. Some great stuff has come out in the recent years. Which it's as if that they have taken they've taken it forward. And they've taken a step forward, and lots of people are writing new things, powerful things. So I think that's, for example, there I know I can see it. I just happen to know about that. I'm talking of poetry in particular. I'm not very familiar with the short stories scenario, but poetry in particular. So I think, since we are theatre people here, I think more and more people need to be engaged in theatre. And I know that in colleges, a lot of people do theatre for a number of reasons. But whatever is the reason, I think they should still keep doing it. And I think we should encourage it.
Sudhanva, about the language. How can we evolve a language? A language of people, language of secularism, language of something that is different from the language that is used and actually that is also digested by people. Even the common people, even the tribals I have seen speaking the language of corporates. The language is something you know and you identify. How do we actually bring it back? How do we evolve something that is people's, something that is that actually renounces the voice of protest?
As Mala said, I agree with her that there's no one way to do this. I think there are many, many different ways in which this has to be done. And language is something that is deeply connected to land. कि अगर आप ये देखें कि कहीं पर भी अगर आप चलते हैं, even in one state, even if the main language is the same, every 50 kilometers, the way it's articulated, the way it's spoken, etc. will change. तो इसलिए भाषा और जमीन इसका एक बहुत गहरा एक रिश्ता होता है. भाषा जो है वो जमीन के ऊपर जो पनपती है. तो मुझे लगता है कि जहां जहां पर हम काम कर रहे हैं वहां की क्या लोकल भाषा है, वहां के क्या लोगों के एक्सप्रेस करने के जो उनके तरीके हैं, उन तरीकों को अपनाते हुए, उन तरीकों को और ज्यादा समृद्ध करते हुए, उनको और ज्यादा डेवलप करते हुए हमको काम करना है. आई थिंक इट्स रियली इम्पोर्टेंट दैट we have to look at all sorts of new things that are happening around us. There have been so many struggles in all kinds of educational institutions, not just in JNU or Jamia or FTI, but a whole range of educational institutions across the country. There have been so many struggles. And in many of these struggles, you find that the students who are taking part in these struggles, a large number of them are composed of students of underprivileged backgrounds, whether caste or community or language or whatever, economically and so on. They are bringing in a whole new discourse into society. And we have to engage with this discourse. We have to learn new ways of expressing ourselves. And I think that there's a lot of material out there. People are also doing very interesting things in social media, stand-up comedy, etc.
Yes.
etc. There's a whole. I'm not saying कि मैं अगर कल को stand-up comedy करने की मैं कोशिश करूं तो मैं अच्छा कर लूंगा. मैं नहीं कर पाऊंगा. It's a different form.
Yeah.
Right? मैं एक्टर हूं, मैं स्ट्रीट थिएटर करता हूं, मुझे वो करना आता है. लेकिन स्ट्रीट थिएटर करने में भी अगर मैं ये सोचूं कि स्ट्रीट थिएटर जैसे हम आज से 20 साल पहले करते थे, 25 साल पहले करते थे, वैसा ही स्ट्रीट थिएटर अगर आप करते रहेंगे हमेशा, वही चलता रहेगा, वही एक चीज है, ये नहीं है. आई थिंक वन हैज टू रिमेन ओपन टू बी इन्फ्लुएंस्ड बाय ऑल काइंड्स ऑफ थिंग्स दैट आर हैपनिंग अराउंड अस, बट मोस्ट ऑफ ऑल, मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट, वी हैव टू बी इन्फ्लुएंस्ड बाय द पीपल. और लोगों के बीच में जाना, लोगों के साथ लगातार एक जिंदा रिश्ता रखना, दैट इज द ओनली वे आउट. मुझे लगता है कि आपने बात की भाषा की, और भाषा में किस तरह से एक बदलाव आया है, इसमें कोई शक की बात नहीं है. ये हुआ है, एकदम डेफिनेटली हुआ है. बट आई थिंक ऑल्सो दैट these changes are not always permanent. They can also be reversed,
Yeah.
And these changes can be reversed if there are mass struggles. हमने देखा जब farmers agitation हुआ, उसकी वजह से towards the end of the farmers agitation, in fact after Modi had announced that they are going to take back the farm laws, there was a big mahapanchayat that happened in Muzaffarnagar.
Yes.
Now Muzaffarnagar is the area of Western UP where they had engineered riots, violence and so on, that had become a very important part of their winning the election in 2014. you know. और वहां पर जिस तरह का जहर जो है समाज के अंदर ये किया था, उसको फैलाया था, ऐसे में कोई सोच नहीं सकता था कि इतनी बड़ी 5 लाख लोग वहां पर आएंगे. 500,000 पीपल टर्न्ड अप देयर, 5 लाख लोग, और जो कि हर कम्युनिटी के लोग थे, हिंदू, मुसलमान, सिख, ईसाई, सब थे वहां पर. एंड इन सच लार्ज नंबर्स पीपल केम टुगेदर and asserted their rights. How did this happen? In an area that was so deeply communalized, you know, where the communal poison had gone down so deep. How were they able to reverse it, even if for even if for a while? But it showed you that reversal is possible, and reversal is possible if there are going to be struggles on the ground. So I think that it's really important for us to be connected to struggles, to support every struggle, to be there on the ground with our art in support of people who are fighting for their rights.
Okay, on that note, and also for all the artists who are working for the people and with the people, all of us take inspiration from Janam, of course, from you people who continuously work on your skills, your language, and other things. We, whoever are working with the theater, I say again, whoever are working with the theater, they have to use only one language that belongs to the people. So we hope in future Prajanatya Mandali, Chennai Kulu, or Sholapur, or all the areas of from all the states and areas of India, we can come together and work together. Maybe learning from each other is very, very important. And also, I feel that particularly learning from Janam is more important for every group to get back to their roots, inspired by you as usual. When it was done, I remember, because again I recite, I remember attending Chauraha and then number of meetings organized by Janam. And I have seen many of our people from our state committee, from our artists, got inspired and they themselves started working, forming a group, starting performances. And they are like, take the name of Janam, it is like a talisman, and jao, karo, jadoo ho jayega, kind of a thing. I think we need that kind of magic again, that magic of spirit, magic of going forward, magic of hope. That I think, because these are the difficult situations, as you are maybe reciting in your Andher Nagari. This is a very difficult situation, and this talk is very useful for all of us, particularly for PNM. We had other talks also. We continue to do so. Hopefully, we work together again, organize a lot of things against the current fascist regime, upholding the rights of people and democracy, upholding the values of constitution. We hope to work together again. And what can I say? We need to bring back that momentum into people's theater. Thank you very much, Comrade Malashri Hashmi and Comrade Sudhanva Deshpande from Jana Natya Manch, for joining Telugadda for this wonderful discussion and talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Devi.
Thank you, Devi. Thank you so much.